If you're like me, a millennial just past the big 3-0, you might be aching for a good racing game. A subjectively good racing game, of course, and for me, well, I was heavily influenced by Need for Speed Underground 2, Most Wanted, Carbon, and later by the Forza Horizon series, so a good racing game for me will probably be somewhere along those lines. And while I enjoyed Horizon 4, 3 and 5, descending in how much enjoyment I got out of them, the most recent Need for Speed games really haven't been for me in many ways. Their handling is weird, the story and cutscenes are cringe, but not in a good way, the soundtracks suck, and it is lacking something. Both Need for Speed and Forza Horizon lack an identity. If there's one country that I think definitely has a very distinct way of doing things, a distinct identity in how it creates media, it's Japan. I am really not that well educated in anything Japanese, but given the fact that so many people in the rest of the world love Japan and Japanese culture, they must be doing something distinct and right. And when several people advised me to check out Tokyo Xtreme Racer under my video about my fictional perfect future racing game, I thought to myself, why not give it a shot? Before we go any deeper though, two things. First, I have to admit that I am an absolute newbie when it comes to the series, the gaming culture of Japan, and the topic of Japanese racing in general. I bet that there are thousands of dedicated fans from all over the world who can tell me all about it, but all I can do is view the game from my own NFS and Forza Horizon infused point of view. Just view me as a bland, white slate of average gamer nothingness and excuse any dumb or uninformed takes I have. Second, I know the game is in early access. I know it will get more content, better performance, better UI, whatever. But it is what it is right now. Criticizing it doesn't mean I don't like it. Alright, so, for those who don't know, Tokyo Xtreme Racer is a single-player game inspired by the real-life racing on the expressways of the greater Tokyo area. While increased police presence and controls, as well as speed traps and hefty fines have lowered the numbers of racers on Tokyo's highways, it is still a popular scene and subculture with a lot of international fans. From 1994 to 2006, or 2017 if we count mobile games, developer Genki published over 20 titles in the series, among other games. And in 2025, they released let's call it a reboot of the series to Steam Early Access. And as I was aching for a good racing game to play while watching endless hours of YouTube video essays, I bought the game and went right in. And as I'm writing these exact words right now, I am 11 hours deep. Not enough to beat the current mid-February version of the game, but I think enough to form a first opinion. And there are a few aspects I want to talk about. If I had to describe TXR in as little words as possible, I would call it a tuning game with races sprinkled in between. Compared to the rest of the content available as of right now, the game is massive on tuning. I would say it covers the most important parts of a car one would want to tune without being overly excessive like, hi-fi equipment or painted cables and fuel lines or whatever. I mean, the more customizability, the better, but I feel like Genki focused on just the right things for early access. Obvious stuff like performance improvements, wheels, spoilers and hoods, and also a few bumpers and skirts that are not numerous but well chosen. On the more non-essential side of things, we have neons with different colors, brightnesses or even flashing patterns, caliper and rotor tuning, and even very custom license plates that absolutely need some translation work done. These options are visually separate from the tuning sections and are called Aero. Now, if you have chosen your desired selection of horsepower increasing money pits, you can also calibrate those parts to quite an extent. In the settings submenu, we have alignment, braking, LSD, suspension, stabilizer and transmission options, though I gotta say that I usually don't play around with that stuff too much, but it is a good to have just as the tire wear mechanic. Now, if we want to look at our creation, there's a first little gripe. While the game does the typical switching to a preset camera angle depending on the part of the car you are tuning, you have to press a button to enter the free camera spinning around the car. That is quite annoying, to be honest, if I just want to take a quick look from another angle while I'm tuning or designing the car. Speaking of designing, in the livery section of the root menu we have access to body color, nice, good, with, and I just in this second saw this, a detailed color picker with metallic and matte options. Oh damn, my car could have looked so much better for the past 11 hours. But now comes the interesting part. Liveries. I love liveries in tuning games, especially when they are as freely customizable as in TXR. Size, colors for most, positioning, mirroring, everything you need is there. What else can I say? It's great. It enables creativity. I love it. Oh, before I forget, the car's models are good. Nothing really to complain about here except for some tiny nitpicks. But hey, again, early access. What I do want to complain about is the game's performance. Yes, early access, I know, but still. I always say that I usually don't care about graphics. As long as it's consistent and performant, I can like a game's graphics no matter what. Minecraft looks ass compared to RDR2, but it is consistent and, with Sodium for example, performant. And that is great. I love it. TXR on the other hand is not that consistent and sadly not very performant for how it looks. It doesn't look bad per se, and as I said, the car models are good for example, but the rest is kind of bland to be honest. Setting everything to Ultra in 2K, I get around 45 FPS with a 6800 XT, which in some cases, with some tinkering, is a 4K 60 GPU if not at full Ultra, and pretty much always a 2K 60 GPU. So I did some digging and I found out that on high-end Ultra Global Illumination, TXR uses Lumen, UE5 software-based ray tracing solution. The game sadly never mentions this and the impact is quite hefty, as I'm doing much better in 2K at everything Ultra except for Global Illumination, which is at medium. With a bit of messing around in the settings and without TSR, I could probably even achieve 4K 60, but boy oh boy does this game have some nauseating aliasing even at 4K. That is not worth it. What's also quite annoying is that you can't change your graphics settings from inside the game. You have to go back to the title menu to do it. But every time you go back to the title, you gotta skip through the developer logos and wait for the logo to flash and so on. Whoops, Zeba from the editing here. I actually made a mistake. You can access the graphics menu from the garage, not only from the title menu. My point does still stand though. But I do think that Genki will improve upon the performance, UI and much more, so I'm not too worried. I said in the beginning of the video that Japanese games, even keeping in mind how little I know about them, seem to be very distinctive, and so is TXR. It's the way the dialogues are translated, how they are visualized, how the characters are stylized, the music, the titles you're given, all of that stuff. It started out with me being a little irritated, that might be too harsh, but it was weird. I was laughing it off, shrugging it off, but I've grown fond of it. There's detail and love put into it, and I would never complain about that. There are teams with varying amounts of drivers and leaders. They have names surrounding several topics, stretching from American football to delivery services, team-based logos and car designs, and that is wild, whole biographies for each individual driver. I do wonder if that was... necessary is not the right word, who am I to decide over necessity, but... oh, okay, look at this. Who reads these? I mean, sure, if you're into it, go ahead, but to me personally, the game doesn't visualize and display these people enough for me to care. Maybe there are hidden stories woven into the game when you talk to every person in every parking lot and read all the references or whatever, but my ADHD brain is not made for that. Another contributing factor to this are the names. I'm super fine with names from other languages and cultures, don't get me wrong. I actually would have preferred just Japanese or whatever names for simplicity's sake over Big Dipper Meteor, Raging Choreographer, Victory Hand Sign or Demon's Lair on the Road. I can't care for these people, as the game obviously wants me to with the reference menu, if their names are a selection of household items, astronomy and whatever mixed together. But that's a personal issue, I guess. What I want to say is, the game has a lot of identity, and that is a good thing. I can imagine people being put off by its quirks and features at the beginning, but you just gotta stick to it or ignore it and enjoy the game for all it has to offer. The problem is, what does it have to offer? Well, the tuning of course, that's great, A+, absolutely no problem there, but what else is there? A lot of the cars, especially the most important one, are locked quite far into a progression system, just as some tuning parts, perks, skills or whatever. The system is a bit hidden and not communicated very well, so it took some time before I found and used it. And while it is kind of the whole deal of the game to be arcadey and simple like in the good old days, I would love to have more. Specifically, more races. Fighting for every ounce of horsepower and the most stylish spoilers over dozens of races is much more enjoyable if every race isn't exactly the same. And it might be that that's the whole point of the game, because there are only 1v1 spirit point races. But I gotta say, it gets old quite soon, especially because there are only two outcomes of these races really. Either I am quite a bit quicker than my enemies, or much slower. There seldom is a real fight in these races. Top speed is everything, and as soon as I go past a certain speed, the others can't keep up, and I win. Well, you might say, but you gotta drive well to reach that top speed, that's what's challenging about it. Do I though? Because as you might remember, we are driving on a highway built to be driven on quickly, it is its whole purpose. So, to mitigate this and to give the game more variety, there are only two options. Either more different events on the highways, or always the same event but in the city. Tight corners, dense traffic, you get the idea. If I had to make a guess, I would say that TXR, at least in these modern times, couldn't keep a long-term player base outside of hardcore fans if it didn't go for at least one of the two options. And if you want more TXR, you should want a bigger player base. We will see what Genki will come up with. So, what else is there? The root menu system is a bit clunky if you ask me, but that's quite subjective of course. While it's bad that you have to go back to the title menu and change graphics settings, it's great that you not only see the effect of your tuning settings directly in the garage, but you can also change steering, braking and accelerating, response and return times, which helped me a lot with improving the distinctive handling. I'm not saying it's bad, because I have always struggled with being able to distinguish well-handling racing games from poorer handling ones, so maybe I just suck at racing in general, but playing around with these settings improved my experience quite a lot. And then there's just some annoying stuff. It happens quite a lot that your cursor, which you control with your sticks on a controller, sits right where the decline option in a menu is. So then this happens. You want to exit a menu. The game asks, do you wish to exit? Pressing A means yes, pressing B means no. You press A out of instinct, but your cursor is on the button for B, no. So by clicking yes, you click yes on no. That is... Finding rivals on the map is quite annoying at times because it can get crowded. There are filters, but I would love for them to be a bit more detailed. I talked about the handling before, but I feel like there's some kind of stabilization, maybe. It feels like the car is almost glued to the street, and too much at that. I've seen people discuss this in the Steam forums, so I might not be alone in this. Funnily enough, I feel like the cars finally feel more like they are supposed to once the tires are completely worn down. Oh, by the way, if you buy this game to drift your car, you're in for a bad time. I like the idea of the parking lots though, they give the game a feeling of having a real community alive inside of it. NPCs talk about you and other drivers, and you can approach people and challenge them to race, and sometimes even only when you've reached a certain level of entry, whether it's a specific car or name or whatever. That's cool. Okay, let's stop for now. I said that modern games, modern races, are lacking identity, and this game, luckily, has a lot of it. It is a great tuner, a serviceable racer, and a fun stylistic journey. I know that I complained quite a lot about TXR in this video, but I do it with love. I know the game is in early access, but many people tend to use this stage as an excuse and a shield to not have to face the fact that the game they like has flaws. Every game has flaws, and a good developer will listen to the flaws the community points out to improve their game. And while I am just one random dude, not the community, I want to throw my opinion on the game out there into the void and see what'll stick. I'm sure that Genki will continue to improve upon this game until it reaches its full potential. Thanks for watching.